Hello! In today's video, we are going to be going over the talent builds that I use on my heroes when I'm using 5 marches in the open field. In the background here, I'm going to be hopefully having some PvP between Soju and EDS. Soju is known as BTR. EDS are our allies, but this is a very fun fight between two 18 billion power alliances, so I like to showcase this. And for the majority of this video, I will be doing a voiceover, but right now I am recording this live. It looks like BTR has actually been able to get on this tower for a very short period of time, but maybe now EDS are more online. I'm not sure what exactly the situation is here. BTR has successfully taken this spire, or I guess it's possible that they've had it already. I'm not sure because I haven't been paying too much attention to this zone. But I will edit back to when we actually have some PvP happening here, and when that is the case, I'll just show that off. I hope you enjoy watching people fight other than our alliance, ROG, and if you want to see more of this in the future, or you would like me to spectate your fights when they're happening, please let me know down in the comments below. So, let me know what you think, and without further ado, let's get into the main topic of this video, which is my hero pairings and their talents. So, now let's start talking about our hero pairings. When you're building your hero pairings, there are a few things that you want to focus on. The most important thing to focus on is your march speed. On top of your march speed, you need to consider what type of heroes you're bringing. You have your damage heroes, your control tree heroes, and your support heroes. In my setup, I have 3 DPS marches, 1 control march, and 1 support march. This can vary by player to player, but I think this is a ratio that makes sense. If you want to go more heavily on DPS, you should do 4 DPS and 1 support. Or you can even go heavy on control tree. You could do maybe 2 or 3 control tree and 1 DPS, 2 DPS, or 1 DPS, 1 support. One thing that we need to talk about before we go ahead and start breaking down my hero talent trees is we need to discuss what talent trees you should be building and what type of marches you should be building when you're doing a ball. A ball is when you have several marches that you play all on top of each other, which is what I'm currently doing. The most important thing you want to do when you're building your ball is make sure that they all have the same march speed, or have one with slightly higher march speed that's much tankier. As a free-to-play player, you should aim to have march speed, that way you can get in and out of combat as quickly as possible, and personally, I did not build my heroes in this way. This is something that I am considering changing, but as a free-to-play player, you also need to consider conserving your gems for another day. There are 3 different types of marches that you should be using in the open field. There are PvP marches, control marches, and support marches. Personally, I am using 3 DPS marches, 1 control march, and 1 support march. This number can vary from player to player, and it is entirely up to you what composition you'd like to bring. But it is important to identify what composition you are using and why you are wanting to use this composition. First, I am going to show the talent trees that I am currently using quickly, and then after that we are going to go and take a look at the talent trees that I believe I should be using. The talent trees that I am currently using are either heavily inspired by or copies of other people's builds, and the talent trees that I am going to suggest using, at least for myself, or talent trees that I have personally designed for my own account. The talent trees that you want to use for your own account will vary depending on your hero skills, because your hero skills give you march speed, and you want to balance your march speed. Without further ado, let's first take a look at my 3 DPS marches. This is the tree that I use on my Bertrand. Go ahead and pause if you would like to copy it, although this is maybe not the tree that you should be using. This is the tree that I use on my Waldyr. Again, if you'd like to pause it, go ahead. Obviously in the bottom here, you do definitely want this march speed. This is a mistake that I made that I deeply regret, but it is what it is. And this is the tree that I use on my Syndrion, which is all in on the precision tree and definitely doesn't have enough march speed. Now, since we have taken a look at our 3 DPS builds, let's also go ahead and take a look at our control march build and our support march build. These are the talents that I am currently running on Velyn. Again, feel free to pause and take a screenshot if you'd like to copy it. And these are the talents that I am using on my Atheus, which is a support march. Please note, there's one talent point in this march speed. I put the march speed for these marches into a spreadsheet, and as you can see, there's clearly a disparity between the marches. Velyn Alwyn and Atheus Indus are way too fast relative to their marches. So, we're going to need to remedy this. Let's now go ahead and take a look at what marches I believe I should be using if I want to equalize my march speed. It is important to note that equalizing your march speed may not be your goal, especially if you're a tier 5 player. But personally, as a tier 4 player, I believe that moving in one ball constantly and not having a march stick ahead or lag behind is very important. I hope that you enjoyed watching that footage of EDS fighting BTR. Let me know if you like this style of editing. Before we get into the hero talents, I would like to remind you that these talents are very tailored to me specifically. Depending on your hero skill levels, the talents that you should use will be different. And depending on what marches you're using, obviously, if you're using one march instead of one of the marches I'm using, your needs will be very different. Let's go ahead and start looking at the builds. First, let's go ahead and take up Bertrand, because he is the bottleneck. Neither Bertrand nor Tohar have any skill that gives them march speed, and this means that we have to build our marches around them. Now let's go ahead and take a look at Bertrand's talent tree. Since Bertrand is our primary DPS march, we're actually barely changing him. As you can see, the only change that we're doing is we're adding 2% march speed. Instead of having this talent here to increase our attack by 0.5%, we are increasing our march speed by 2%. Doing this allows us to increase the march speed of all of our marches by 2% without punishing ourselves. If we wanted to have faster marchers all around, what we could do is go into the PvP tree. But since Bertrand is so heavily focused on skill damage, we want to go over here and get this skill. So it's not an option to get more march speed, even though this 10% march speed would be really nice. It could be an option to go for one of these skills, for example to inflict a defense break, especially because my pet has such a good skill on it, but we'll talk about that in a second. Having equal march speed on all of your units is going to be very key in order to have an effective ball. When you're using your ball, you want all of your marches to start hitting the target as close in time to each other as possible. You also don't want any of your marches to lag behind. Making all of your marches as slow as they can be may be a bad thing. I still need to test this personally. But at least when you have them all at the same speed, you will know when you have to retreat, instead of having a variation between when your fastest marches retreat successfully and when your slowest ones do. Your slowest marches in this case will most likely get picked off, so it's easier to be conscious of how soon you will need to retreat if your marches all have the same march speed. Obviously, if we were to go into this tree to get the defense break, I would not be getting this skill, and this skill is very good. So I believe that going for this skill, while it may be a thing, it's not something that I'm comfortable with suggesting any of you guys do. I will talk about it with some people that I know who are more interested in hero talents than I am and who have more knowledge. And after talking with them, I may put out a different video at the end of this season with some things that I've learned about these talents. One thing that I did mention there is pets. As a free-to-play player in this game, I have decided to invest very heavily in specific war pets. So, in doing that, I only captured Shadow Phaedrakes for a very long time, and because of that, my rage skill on my Shadow Phaedrake is now level 3. The damage factor will be increased when I get future talents, and the duration of this skill will be increased to either 5 or 6 seconds. Having a 16% damage boost on my targeted target is very intense. Inflicting a defense break on the target as well would further increase this. If you were not in a position where you have a pet that is this good, one thing that you could consider doing in order to boost your march speed is to actually use a pet skill on your pet. If you go into the 1-star skills here, I have 1-star wild agility. While learning this would only give me 1.2% march speed. If I had a higher agility roll, which may be a little bit difficult, I could increase my march speed on this march by up to 2%. Increasing my march speed on this march by 2%, while it doesn't seem like much, would allow me to increase the march speed on all of my marches by 2% by only having the pet skill on this one hero. The reason why I would be able to do that is because I would be able to take talents on the other heroes to better reflect this. When you are building your own ball, it is important to identify what hero is your bottleneck. Identifying the hero that is your bottleneck, which is most normally the heroes in your ball that do not have skills that give you march speed, is very important, and you should start with these heroes when you're figuring out what march speed to give the units in your ball. Some people don't care about the march speed of their units in their ball, but I believe that having them all be similar or as close as possible in march speed is good. As I've noticed, my Velyn, having way higher march speed than my other marches, often steps out in front. My Velyn stepping out in front may seem good, and it's good when you have a very long refill time. However, when you're fighting on the front lines and you're in a ball, it's not great. The reason why it is not great is because your hero will often get targeted first. Anyways, I could continue to ramble about this, but now let's go ahead and instead get into our Syndrion talent build. Again, I would like to remind you that these talents are tailored very specifically to me. If your Fragar has a higher skill level, you have no reason to get these talents here. Getting these talents cost me from getting one of these two skills here. I could take one of these skills, but my march will be 4% slower, and I don't see this as very valuable since Syndrion, even though I'm a mage main player, is my second highest damage dealer consistently, and sometimes even does more damage than my Bertrand. As you may be able to notice, I also have two different builds here. One is if you're like me and you don't have a very high level Fragar. This other build is a build that you could use if you're copying this build, and you can use these two talents here to customize your march speed by either putting more talents into this skill or this skill to lower it. Having a mix of different types of troops in your ball, especially as a free-to-play player, is very important. As a free-to-play player, you are only able to train a certain number of troops. So, using two different troop types, or in this case, if you're me, using three different ones, that being Vestals, Celestials, and Archers, that allows me to more easily field two Vestal marches, one Archer march, and two Celestial marches. So, you should have a slight diversity in heroes. Even if you are a mage man, you should have one Archer march, or if you're an Archer march, you should have one mage march. That way you can at least utilize those troops. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the build that I have on my Velyn. This Velyn build is extremely similar to my old one. The only difference is that I actually decreased its march speed. As you can tell, I took 5 points out of here and 1 point out of here, reducing its march speed by 12%. Again, you may think that this is strange to decrease the march speed of your legions. However, if your goal is to have an effective ball that lasts longer and deals damage together, this is actually a good idea. What's the point in having one march that retreats faster or attacks faster when your other four marches are either getting left behind and being picked off, or they're attacking first and, you guessed it, being picked off. I also have a secondary build here. In case you don't want to go up and get this Army of Valor tree, you could also go across and get this Energy Boost tree, which has an 8% chance to add an additional target to rage skills that deal damage to multiple targets. This is something that you could do, however I believe that I would stick with this build. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the build on my Waldyr. This build is very similar to the build that I previously had, and I would like to remind you that these builds are specifically tailored to my skills. The reason why I moved this talent from Steady Hands over to Fully Loaded is that I'm using Thea, and Thea does not do skill damage. Also, I added the march speed down here, which, is something that you should definitely do. I'm not sure why I didn't have march speed down here in my original build. I believe that maybe I thought the heroes were going to be reset again, so I made a mistake. I can't understand why I would ever do this. Oh well. Now, let's go ahead and get into our last hero build, which is Atheus. Our goal with Atheus Indus is to be a support march. So, we took the skills related to gaining more rage, which is helpful for allowing you to cast your rage skills and your artifact, and we also took healing related skills. In this tree, we get the exact same march speed. You ignore the march speed here, and you take the march speed up here. The reason why we are doing this is because we would prefer to get 2% defense rather than counterattack damage, or legion capacity, or damage dealt. It may seem silly to go for defense on your Atheus as opposed to damage dealt, but since these are my lowest merit gainers and my lowest damage dealers, it actually makes sense. If you think this is wrong, please let me know in the comments. However, I believe that this does actually make sense, as I did just say. Here's a more zoomed out of this build. The one extra talent point is right here, and this gives us a perfect amount of march speed. Since I am a free-to-play player, I won't actually be able to change my talents very soon, because that would cost me 5,000 gems, which is not a fee that I'm willing to pay. Unfortunately right now, I actually have no talent reset books. I only have 4 skill reset books. So that's not even something I could do if I wanted to. What's kind of silly is that I spent my talent books on resetting my Indus skills to be PvP skills, and I even reset my Pan skills. Don't ask me why I did this. I thought this was going to be good. It turns out that these heroes, even though that might seem like they should be support heroes as primaries, they are far, far better as deputy heroes. And Pan isn't even that good as a deputy. There are 2 ways that I could go about getting these books. I could wait to purchase them from the Goblin Merchant. That would cost me 500 gems each, seeing as in an ideal world I would need 7. That would cost me 3,500 gems instead of 7,000. In this math, I am including my Indus and Pan talents to instead have gathering talents. Another option that I have is that I could wait for an event to pop up. Unfortunately, these seasonal events are far and few between. I believe they are every 3 months, and you only get 3 books from them. So that would take me 9 months. Spending 3,500 gems is probably worth saving 9 months. So, when they show up in the Goblin Merchant, I am probably going to start buying them. I'm going to wait a little bit to see if 500 is the lowest price they can get to, and if that is the lowest price that is possible, I will begin to buy a few of them. I wish that they were cheaper, or in a more ideal world free. However, spending a few gems in order to improve the effectiveness of my ball is definitely very worth it. Again, if we pull up my spreadsheet, the heroes that I will be prioritizing are Velyn Alwyn first, then Atheus Indus, and then Syndrion Fragar, and then changing the talents on Bertrand and Tohar and Waldyr and Thea would just be gravy, because those heroes are already very close to where they need to be. I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you got any value from me showing the talents that I have been using and the talents that I'm planning on using, do me the favor of liking the video. If you would like to see more videos like this, subscribe and comment telling me what videos you would like to see. If you enjoyed watching EDS and BTR fight at the beginning of this video, and you would potentially like some of your alliances fighting showcased in some of my videos, all you have to do is message me on Discord and tell me either when you are planning on fighting or when you are fighting, and if I have time, I will either plan to come watch or will come watch. I cannot guarantee that I can show you your PvP in my videos, but it would be a cool thing to do to occasionally show some PvP for some other alliances. Again, I hope that you enjoyed watching this video. Thanks for watching, and have a great rest of your day.